All right, so today we are in section 4.4, least common multiple. In a lot of ways, least common multiple, or at least the way that I find it, is the same as GCF. So that's good news because we've already learned GCF. You should know how to do GCF. LCM just involves a few extra steps. All right, so before we do that, I just want to review real quick GCF since it is pretty foundational to today's lesson. So I want you to find the GCF of 144 and 192. Go ahead and work on that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put up the prime factorization. If you don't already have it, go ahead and write it down. List them out. Prime factors of 144, 2, 2, 2, 4 times, and 2 3s. 192 is 6 2s and a 3. All right. Now, why did I circle those groups? Why did I circle them? Because that's a factor that they both have in common. Okay, so I circle my common factors. What do I do with those numbers? Multiply them for each group. I write it once in my GCF, and I multiply them together to get 48. So guess what? The LCM is just one step further. I take my GCF because I'm going to use each group. I'm going to write each number once, so it's my GCF multiplied by my leftover numbers. That's just the last step to find LCM. I take my GCF and I multiply in my leftover numbers to find my LCM. Just one more step to find LCM. That's all we're learning today. It's just that last step. Okay, so now there's another way. I did not mean to press that button. There's another way that I can find LCM, and this only works with very small numbers, but it's important that we talk about it because I want you to get to the point where you can do this part mental math. Especially when it comes to finding your least common denominator. Let's imagine for a minute that these two numbers are denominators. Okay, well, you know you cannot add and subtract a fraction unless the denominator is the same, correct? Okay, so that's kind of where we're going with this part. So I start with the larger of the two numbers and I start listing the multiples. Remember, a multiple is that number being multiplied over and over by itself, okay? So I go 6. Does 4 go into 6? No. So then I go to 12. Does 4 go into 12? So my LCM is 12. Okay, so on your homework tonight, on your first two problems, this is what your homework is. So I want you to just list the two numbers, start listing your multiples of the larger number until you get to a number that they both go into. All right, so what about this one, 7 and 8? I want you to list the multiples until you find one that they both go into. Okay, so 7 doesn't go into 8, doesn't go into 16, so I just keep going on my multiples until I get to a number, 56, that 7, yes, goes into. So my LCM is 56. Who got 56? All right, very good. Now let's do one more, 12 and 16. All right, go ahead and list your multiples until you find your LCM. What about 32? Does it work? No. What about 48? Yep, so LCM is 48. Now, what if I had three numbers? Okay, well, let's start with our very largest number, which is 14. Okay, well, yes, 2 goes into 14, but does 6 go into 14? No, so it is not my LCM because all three numbers don't go into it. All right, so keep going until you find a multiple that all three numbers go into. All right, so 14's out, 28's out. What about 42? Yep, 6 goes into 42 7 times and 2 goes into it as well. LCM is 42. All right, so now we're going to do LCM using prime factorization. You're going to find on these and on your homework tonight also anytime you're doing prime factorization, are you listening? I want you to go ahead and find both the GCF and the LCM. Here's why. Because you essentially have to find the GCF anyway, all right, by grouping your common factors. So I just want you to go ahead and tell me what is the GCF and then take it one step further and find the LCM. So go ahead and do the prime factorization and find the GCF of these two numbers. Okay, so let's get through the prime factorization. All right, so if you're not this far, go ahead and copy down the prime factors. Go ahead and group your common factors and tell me the GCF. Write it on your papers. Okay, so we group our common factors. What did you find to be the GCF? What is the GCF? 12. Very good. 2 times 2 times 3. So now we take the GCF and now we multiply in our leftover numbers. So look here where I have my prime factors listed. Which numbers did not get grouped? 2, a 3, a 5, and a 7. So I'm going to come over to my LCM and I'm going to multiply in 2 times 3 times 5 times 7 to get my LCM of 2,520. Just one more step to find the LCM. That's it. All right, so now I want you to do the prime factorization and the GCF of 54 and 126. All right, so prime factorization, group our common factors, 2, 3, and 3. Okay, so for my common factors, it's the same. GCF and LCM, it's the same, okay? But what's the difference? With the LCM, I have to now multiply in my what? Yeah, I got my GCF in there. 2 times 3 times 3. Okay, but now with my LCM, what do I still have to do? 3 and 7 for my LCM. So GCF is 18 and LCM is 378. Okay, GCF, guys, and LCM, it's the same thing, except with the LCM, I've got to multiply in my leftover numbers. You see that, Blake? Andrew, you see that? Okay. All right, one more. I want you to do the prime factorization of these 3 numbers, and then I want you to stop. List your prime factors, but then stop. Okay? All right, so prime factorization of all 3 numbers, it's very short, okay? Not a whole lot of prime factors here. Now for GCF, do you see any factors that are common in all 3 numbers? No, there are no common factors except the number 1. So when my GCF is 1, what do I call the numbers? Relatively prime. But with my LCM, and get this, guys, because you're going to see this on your homework tonight, it does not have to be a common factor in all 3 numbers. It only has to be a common factor in 2 of the numbers. So do you see some groups that you could circle now if it only has to be in 2 of the numbers? A group of 2s, a group of 5s, and a group of 11s. So you go 2, 5, and 11 in your LCM. Now, do you have any leftovers? A 2. So when you multiply them all together, you get 220 for the LCM. All right? So on your homework tonight, when you have 3 numbers, remember the factor has to be in all 3 for the GCF, but only 2 for the LCM. And if you understand that, that's all you need to know for least common multiple.